That's amazing. That was really exciting. That's super exciting.
I helped for Michael because I don't know that one and I get in trouble. I had
tells the story. In the work that we do as UN Women around the world, in the 85 countries where we have full presence, and in every country where we touch women beyond the countries that we work in, we estimate that there's 1 billion women in the world who live with violence. There is just, if this was a country, it will be one of the biggest countries in the world after India and China. And it is silent because women are the walking wounded. So thank you for using your craft to help to give visibility, hopefully to mobilize men and boys whose participation is critical for this scourge to end. As UN Women, we work on ending trafficking in Asia. We work on fighting domestic violence all over the world. We work on ending child marriage everywhere. We work on ensuring that we fight cyber crime around the world. We also work on ending violence and fighting violence in areas where there are conflict, where, as you know, there's mass rapes of women and brutalization that we've never heard of anywhere else in the world. So this is an important contribution that you're making, and the United Nations and UN Women wants to be with you every step of the way. Enjoy the evening.
And I felt ready to make my first feature film, and I make a joke because a lot of my ideas are actually conceptually quite bigger. I like sci-fi, I like much bigger stories sometimes, but I always love honest, good storytelling and good characters. And I make a joke that he said to me, okay, we don't have the budget for this, let's just 2 people and 6 locations, right? And then I was like, well, I'm going to write this film. And I will say that the way that rape had been portrayed in the media and not portrayed accurately or fairly, I felt, was disturbing me for many years leading up to, you know, finally putting pen to paper. And actually writing this, and, you know, I had a friend actually go through this very similar situation, and seeing how, you know, it unraveled her whole life professionally and with her intimacy with her relationships. It made me start to think about, how does one go back to work? How does one, you know, have sex with their partner? And how does one, and it just started to make me think, I feel like this honest portrayal has not been told, and I feel like I felt compelled to do it. And I didn't really care if it was commercial or not. I felt like there were people out there who were craving a story like this, and so I went and did a bunch of research. You know, I spoke to many rape survivors and their partners and many other professionals, and I felt ready to write it, and then some wonderful people went on the journey with me, so, which we're really into. Yeah.
And you know, it's so well structured, it's just so beautifully, it's like really real, but also really well developed and structured. And also the choices you make are really interesting, like when there's silence, when the things are muffled, you know, when you choose not to show things in an exploitive manner. I'd love for you to speak to your choices as a writer, director, and producer of the film.
I mean, I really went over everything in such minute detail. I really wanted to be fair to victims and survivors of sexual assault, and not have it be exploitative in any way, shape or form. And that was largely the reason why, and sorry, Autumn Aiken, our cinematographer, was here, and then she had to fly off. Yes, incredible woman. Yeah, and she had to fly off for another shoot, you know, that happens. And so, I was adamant about having a woman, you know, run the show with me, you know, so that we were 2 women running this show, because, you know, it hasn't been done before, where woman's gaze has, a whole woman's gaze, you know, writer, director, cinematographer, which I would argue are largely, an editor, largely the biggest gazes of the film, where this has been done before. And to me that sounds absurd, that, you know, that we've been letting men tell this story, because I feel surely that's where it starts. You know, we have to have that empathy on some level, and that understanding. So yeah, I think it all came from those instincts naturally, and from the people that I researched and met and spoke to, and I felt like I was never going to explore, I was never going to, you know, over drama. I was going to give it the right amount of drama that it deserved. And also I felt compelled by Bonnie's character and that, you know, get to tell her in an accurate and fair way. So I think all of those instincts come from, you know, somewhere deep within when you're writing this story, when you have deep empathy. And I will say, in terms of technique, I will never recommend to anyone to write, direct, and edit your own film. And so I relied heavily on my incredible producers, and I relied heavily on having, you know, feedback from people, including the cast, including in our rehearsal period, to make sure that, you know, we hit those moments pointedly and that we did it in a way that we felt was fair and honest. And I worked with an incredible composer, incredible sound designer right here, Darren Helena. That was probably the longest process. We spent the longest process on sound design, because I wanted it to be very, you know, all the sounds you see get added back in. So, and that's because of this gentleman right here. So yeah, just tedious and staying true to the story, I think, is the number one thing for me. But then I like that people have interpreted it and given it their own meaning, and I think that that's wonderful. That's what I love about art, is that everyone takes away different things from it. So really, my mum is in the audience. She flew all the way from Australia to be here. And she read me or sing me a song called The Owl and the Pussycat. And it's about an owl and a cat who, you know, unlikely couple, and they're probably not meant to be together. One, I'm pretty sure, is meant to eat the other one. And, and you know, this poem is about they kind of, despite the odds against them, they elope and they run off and they try to make this, you know, unlikely duo work. And the last line is, and hand in hand they dance by the light of the moon. So that just kept, while I was writing the script, it kept playing over and over and over in my mind. And I love hearing people's interpretations of it, though, that it's like a light and a dark place, or that it's like a spotlight on sexual assault or on Bonnie or something like that. And I think these are all wonderful interpretations, but actually it came from this poem that my mom used to read.
And there's even a scene, right? There's even a scene
with the moon. And I love that there's this, you know, actually in one of the press things that we were doing the last couple of days, someone said, I love that someone even blames it on the moon before they blame it on the rapist. Like, and I was like, yeah, they do. And I was like, wow, yeah. I mean, I wrote that line, but you're right, they do say, you know, it's because of the moon or something. So I felt like it fit. So, yeah, so that's why.
Stephanie. Is exquisite, and it's so the balance of moving, the way you're so dramatic and emotional, and everything that you go through being a survivor of rape, but then the humor, right? All of that you constantly, and all of it that you put. How did you prepare for this role? What were you thinking to get to find that perfect balance that you've struck?
I mean, thank you for that lovely compliment. I think that, I mean, I mostly was doing what was written on the page. So all of that humor, all of those jokes, Bonnie's gallows humor is in the script. You know, I think everything, all of the jokes were in the script, right?
The couple.
I was going to ask
you. Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
I mean, I think we improv'd a little bit, but not really. Like most of the time we stuck really to what was in that script. And I think as for preparing it for it, I unfortunately, like so many of us, I'm sure in this audience, know a few people that have been sexually assaulted, and one of whom is a really dear friend who's an incest survivor. And I have been witness to her in the last 6 years over the course of our friendship, her figuring out that this happened to her, her sort of dealing with all of the ways that it's affected her as a human being, all of her relationships, all of her friendships, her job, her sexual life, her just sense of self and like who she is in the world. Is that it? Is she just an incest survivor? Is that it? So being witness to that friend sort of travel this horrible, hard, but very rewarding road. When I first read the script, I saw that friend in the script. I saw her over and over and over. And then I asked her if she would read the script. I was like, it's really triggering. You know, if you can't finish it, I understand. And when I sent it to her, she wrote me back almost immediately and was like, please do this script. I've never seen us, what she said, us, like survivors. I've never seen us talked about, shown, and portrayed in this way. So I don't know, I mean, I guess there's a certain amount of preparation, and I guess you just sort of like steel yourself, like, all right, today we're shooting a sex scene. Like, it's weird and it's gonna be awful, and you know, or like, today's the rape scene, like it's gonna be in a basement in Brooklyn, and you're gonna be hot and sweaty, and you're gonna be very uncomfortable, and like, but also like, I don't know, and I mean, I think, this is kind of maybe a rude thing to say, but I think a lot of times actors get really precious about their process, and like, I don't like to be precious. I just like to work. I just like to do the work and look at the work and see what the reality of the words on the page is and how I can bring my own humanity to lift those words off the page and bring them to life. I think that's my vocation. I think that's what I'm supposed to do.
I think that's evident in your performance.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That seemed very organic and came out of, you know, just us in the space.
Yeah, I feel like the end of the fight while we're eating my gross food scene, in which I cannot stop eating that food. That I think we
That
both
was like a
improvised.
riff.
The
Yeah.
riff, it kind of ended with us riffing, or some of the stuff where I put the baseball hat on her head.
Yeah, some of the ends of the scenes and stuff were riffs.
Yeah, so I would usually say, you know, the last line's yours. And so some of those ended up in the film. Which was,
And I feel like you improvise a lot, like in just little ways. Like
yeah,
Conrad.
You're just
hashtag grateful was all Conrad. It wasn't brilliant.
So we started talking about the OWN network.
I had a meeting.
Yeah,
You know what was so funny is I had a meeting with OWN after South by Southwest, and they were just like, "So we saw you," and I was like, "Yeah, we
Fair use.
Yeah.
Conrad, I want to ask you one quick question because we're running out of time.
Yeah.
I really want to make sure we get to everybody. So your role is also interesting as the, you know,
Gay best friend.
yeah, exactly. There's a movie.
I've had years and years of prep for this role. One of my best friends, Amanda, is right there. She's coached me for years.
Well, you did a fantastic job.
Thank
and it's,
you.
You know, very empathic, and so I just want to hear, but you know, the work for you, the role for you, the improv for you, all of it.
Yeah, again, I have a lot of female friends, and we talk about our relationships together all the time, and we talk about, like, we go through life supporting each other and being there for each other through a lot of difficult things, and that was my preparation for this. I didn't really overthink it. I mean, yeah, that was just being open to stuff. Well, and it was just fun to play. Like, it was fun to I mean, yeah. You don't always come across actors that are there for you, and Stephanie
made our jobs easy.
So
right?
easy.
Yeah.
So this is the first time I've seen Jess sent me a rough, like the first cut. So I'm still like kind of like reeling from watching this. Like both of you guys are so incredible. The story that you've told in such a way that like hangs on to you hang on these moments that anyone else would cut to something else, and it makes you so uncomfortable, but gives you such an idea of what you might go through in that situation, and it's really affecting, and it's really, really like something that I hope everybody watches. In a way, it reminds me of in the way that 12 Years a Slave was really hard to watch, because they lingered on the shot in particular, like when he would like just that it was made me so uncomfortable, but I have a better understanding of what they went through and what women go through after watching this. And anyway, I'm done.
Thank you very much. Before I start, I would again want to thank everybody involved with this film, the director, the producer, the cast, and everybody else for such a thoughtful, sensitive, and very, very authentic, and most of all, very important film. So thank you again. UN Women is the agency of the United Nations, the UN, that works on gender equality and women's rights all over the world. And we work with governments and with civil society, with private sector, with academia, with citizens, with with all actors everywhere on women's rights and gender equality, and you're a global champion for the rights of women and girls. And one of the most important issues that we work on is ending all forms of violence against women and girls. And this moment in time, you know, violence against women and girls for a very, very, very long time was silent. It was private, it was silent, it was not out in the open. It was about over 40 years ago that the first pieces of legislation on addressing violence as a criminal act came into the world through global legislation on this. And since then, many countries in the world have adopted legislation. There are still countries that do not have laws on ending violence against women and girls. But I think what is really important, the reason why UN Women is very proud and privileged to partner with you on this film, is because I think that the film addresses many, many important things, but in particular, 3 things. One, it deals in a very, very sensitive way the nature of what violence does to women and girls, the absolute erosion of self-esteem. Bonnie is a person who is powerful. She has a loving relationship. She has friends, supportive friends. She enjoys her work. She's a confident woman whose self-confidence, whose sense of self is utterly, utterly eroded by this nameless and brutal act. And what is really important in the film is her own struggle with what happens to her. There is this huge struggle with her to lead a normal life, and she resists all efforts of comfort or support because she sees it as not normal, as that she's being taken out of her normal space. And so her struggle is for normalcy. And I think that's such an important discussion around this act of brutal power, and what the response is. So it's really important to have that kind of survivor-centered conversation. Thoughtful, meaningful, respectful, dignified, survivor-centered conversation. So that's one really important aspect of the film, because it puts that right in the center. And then the second aspect of the film is the role of Matt. Again, how important it is to have these kinds of conversations with people who are friends and who support. Because one very interesting point in the film is when Matt talks about cancer and cancer survivors. And he is absolutely well-meaning. But in his mind, this is a disease. He deals with it as a disease, but it is not. It is an absolute act of violence, and it is an act of erosion. So Bonnie's reaction is visceral. And I think that discussion around how do families, how do loved ones, how do communities support is a very crucial one. And then, of course, the reaction of all the service providers, the police, the legal systems, the medical services, and it's not covert. The shaming and the blaming is not covert, but that's what makes it that much more dangerous. Because there is the effort is that the services are in place. She's accessing all the services, but the barriers to accessing those services are so severe in terms of the lack of sensitivity and the lack of respect around those services. So I think that discussion, how do service providers provide these services in a respectful way, again, from the perspective of the person who has endured this act, this crime. So I think this film, and there are many other aspects that the film brings up, the issue of solidarity, for example. She talks about she doesn't want to be part of the sisterhood of victims. And how do you make solidarity empowering and not about being a victim? I think so. There are many, many aspects of this film that are crucial to addressing violence against women and girls, both prevention, response, and also prosecution. And so that's why UN Women has partnered for this film, and these are the kinds of discussions that are necessary now, and this is the kind of work we do here and in the world on this issue.
And I think that the film, as you said so beautifully, really touches on the seminal issues of sexual violence and assault and rape in our culture. So you recognize it, you feel it, you see it, you're almost shamed by it. It is hard to watch. And what we're trying to achieve, whether it is rape in the military, on college campuses, at the bar downtown, we need to treat rape and sexual violence, assault, in a criminal way. It is a crime. There are no excuses, there are no reasons, there are no causes, and to stop blaming the victims. So, we thank you. We will use this work as much as possible.